When you're married, should you combine your finances, make your finances joint, or keep them separate? I've got that and more coming up. My name is Mike Bernardo, the host of the Wise Money Show. I'm also one of the certified financial planners right here at Korhorn Financial Group. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and smash that thumbs up button. Get this question all the time. We're married, or I'm about to get married. Should we keep our finances separate, or should we merge them together? Should they be joint? Now, listen, I've seen and we've seen finances, we've seen it work both ways, but it's not 50-50. It's not, well, you know, it's going to work both ways. It doesn't really matter. If I were to give you some encouragement, and everyone's circumstances are different, okay? But I would encourage you to combine and have your finances be joint. It's just going to be easier. Having your finances separate, it can work. It's just going to be harder. I've seen it work. I know that. I've seen it work, and I've seen people make financial progress and everything work out. It's just going to be harder, okay? Oftentimes, when you merge your finances together, you're both on the same page, for better, for worse. You're both on the same page, everything's together. And when it comes to financial goals, you both are sort of pulling on the same end of the rope, okay? If you are trying to pull a sled, and your finances are attached to this side, your spouse's finances are attached to this side, when your finances are together, they're merged, they're joint, you're both pulling in the same direction. When they're separated, it's often, it doesn't have to be this way, but there's a risk, there's a propensity that you guys start pulling in different directions, even ever so slightly, and you're not able to pull that sled towards financial goals, towards a kind of unified vision of where you want to go financially. So not that it can't work, but it's harder. So my blanket recommendation, our blanket recommendation would be, I would want you to think, yes, you're going to merge your finances. They should be joint, okay? Because having financial success is going to be hard enough. Doing all the right things, life is going to come at you fast. It will throw you curveballs. There's going to be emergencies. There's going to be things that you want to do, things you have to do. All sorts of things will change. It's going to be difficult having your finances separate. Just it's harder. So what do I mean? How is it harder? Okay, because if you're thinking now, I was hoping to have them separate. Well, here are some of the ways it's harder. Whose responsibility is it to save up for retirement? Whose responsibility is it to save up for the next vehicle? Whose responsibility is it to fix to do the home repair, to do the home remodel? Whose responsibility is it to save up and pay for the next vacation? Whose responsibility is it to pay the property taxes, the utility bill, that sort of thing? And so those sorts of things, there's answers to each of those, okay? It's just harder to go through and answer all of those. Now, if you're thinking, or if you have your finances separate, again, I'm not poking you in the eye, because it can absolutely work. I've seen it work. We've helped clients with it. And so it can work. But if you're hearing all of those questions and say, well, you each are, it's 50-50. It's 50-50. So you'll each save up for retirement proportionately. You'll each buy your own vehicles. You'll each pay half of the property taxes, pay half of the utilities, pay half of the grocery bill, that sort of stuff. If you're each going to do that, that can break down very quickly. It has great intentions. It can break down quickly. And here's a few ways that it breaks down. And I've seen this, couples out to eat Venmo each other for half the bill. Okay, that works. And then will you Venmo for half the property taxes? Will you Venmo for half the utilities? Or eventually, my guess is you'll get to a point of, well, I will cover these things and you cover these things. If they're not equal, then in your mind, you might say, well, I covered this and it was more than that, so therefore I should be able to go do this and they shouldn't be able to go do that, sort of thing, right? If it's not perfectly even, then there starts to be, well, wait a second, but you had this little advantage and I didn't, and therefore you shouldn't go do this and I should be able to go do this. Splitting it 50-50 for everything is going to get exhausting. And therefore, you'll start having your own sort of, well, I'll take this, you take that. And that can end up creating a wedge at times. And I've seen it where, well, this really, I'm making a mental tally, it's supposed to be 50-50, it's sort of not, and therefore I should be allowed to do this. Absolutely you should. And then, well, that means you shouldn't do this. Well, then that creates arguments. And again, pulling that sled in the same direction, that starts pulling it apart just a little bit. And then to break it down even further, if your income, if you're both working, I don't see how this works if you're both not working, but if you're not earning the exact same amount, I don't see how this doesn't feel overburdensome on someone versus someone else, right? So if you're earning a different amount, then splitting everything 50-50 is a bigger burden on one person than the other. And therefore, that might be difficult, right? So the person that's earning less should have a cheaper car. The person that's earning more could maybe afford a bigger car. The person that's earning less, the mortgage that you buy might feel, or for the house that you buy, might feel more expensive. They might say, well, then I can't save up for retirement, or I can't cover 50% of this other thing because numerically, nominally, I don't have as much because I don't earn as much. And so I feel like, again, can it work? Absolutely. I've seen it work. But you're going to have to overcome all of these things. And if you don't overcome these things, it's going to be hard to make joint progress together. The big issue is have joint goals together financially. We're going to retire at this time. Even if you retire at different times, it's going to look like this. We want this level of vehicle, or this level of house. We want vehicles that are new, or this is our vehicle strategy. We want to take vacations this frequently and this amount. Those sorts of things. We're going to help kids with college, or we're not going to. Whatever. Wrestle through what are our goals together, and figure out how to get there together, as opposed to, well, we're each sort of side responsible for it. Again, that can create a wedge. Oftentimes, the reason to have things separate is, well, after a divorce, and there's some scar tissue, there's some pain or whatever. I get that, and that's something you got to work through, okay? But and this is sort of the primary reason, is we're going to keep our finances separate because one's a spender, one's a saver. One's a spender, one's a saver. Well, if that's true, then all of those things, all of those real life expenses that I said, well, you're going to need to split these 50-50, every one, otherwise it's going to start feeling unfair or overburdensome. If one's a spender, they're not going to be able to cover the 50% of the mortgage, the 50% of the vacation, the 50% of retirement, the 50% of these things, because they're a spender. Right? And so if that's at the root of it, well, I save and they sort of spend, and I just can't. It's going to stress me out. So they can just go spend their stuff. I'm going to do my thing. Well, then you doing your thing, just assume that you're going to be disproportionately responsible for retirement, vehicles, cars, vehicles, house, repairs, those sorts of things. And if that works for you, then fine. But I would approach it differently. Most marriages, one person is strong financially, the other maybe that's not their strength. One person likes to reconcile or balance the budget, the other person doesn't. One person likes to spend, the other person likes to save. That's typically how it works. If you both like to save, awesome. If you both like to spend, make sure you have a certified financial planner and they're helping you get on the right track and do the little things to help you still save up for the future and do the right things. But most marriages consist of a saver and a spender. Okay, so there are ways that you can put some structure in around it so that the spender has some freedom to spend, and you do too, but you guys are still making progress together. One way is building out that 3 bank account system and having in your monthly budget an allocation where, listen, Joe's going to get this much money or have this much that he can spend, and it really doesn't matter whether he's spending it on Amazon, spending it at the grocery store, going out shopping, going out with his friends. It doesn't matter because we know the budget still works and we're able to save the right amount and pay the right amount towards these things and do what we want to do mutually together, assuming that Joe's going to spend this much every single month. And as long as you guys are aware of that, and as long as Joe says, well, it can't be more than that because we collectively said we want to retire at this time, collectively said we're saving up for this level of house, that sort of thing. And the spender has some freedoms, yet within a structured environment. That's not the only way that it can work, But there are ways that you can work with your certified financial planner, build a cash flow, a cash sort of operating system to allow for both spenders and savers and clarity over where you guys are trying to go together financially so that you stay on the same page. So, finances when you're married, should they be joint? Should they be separate? I would default to have them be joint, find a structure that works for both personality types. If they have to be separate, you're going to need to overcome some of those obstacles that make it harder. Work with your certified financial planner. Both can work. It tends to be easier when things are joint. That'd be the posture that I'd encourage you to take. Work with your certified financial planner. Talk through each of those. You're going to want to have a cash operating system, that 3 bank account system, clarity on your goals, what it takes to save up for them. Work with your CFP on all of that. If you don't have a CFP on your team, you can contact one on my team. Find us online, Korhorn.com. That's Korhorn with a K. WiseMoneyShow.com. You can find us there as well, or send us an email, info@Korhorn.com. All right, there you have it. Go out and take your next wise step in your financial life.